So what if the cops who murdered Breonna Taylor didn't actually break the law? What if the laws are that messed up? Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Stories that I want to just jump right into here in our first hour of our program. Number one, Breonna Taylor and the news that came down yesterday. It came down during the tail end of our show, and we didn't get to it, so I want to get into that. And can Donald Trump get away with normalizing a coup? We'll get into that in just a moment or two. In the second hour of our program, we're going to start out with Professor Richard Wolff, the professor of economics. We're going to do a deep dive into the economics of police brutality and racism. And in our third hour, Mark Weisbrot of the Center for Economic and Policy Research, CEPR, is going to be with us about how the Trump administration is helping to flip South and Central America in authoritarian directions, in this case specifically Bolivia. And I mean, it's a mind-boggling story. So let's, starting with Breonna Taylor. You've got three cops who were involved in this thing. One of them stood out in the parking lot and shot his gun through Breonna Taylor's window. None of those bullets hit her or her boyfriend, but instead they went into the apartment next door, which was occupied by white people, and that's what he's been charged with. He's been charged with recklessly endangering not Breonna Taylor or her boyfriend, but the white people next door. Let that sink in for a minute. Daniel Cameron, who is the Attorney General for Kentucky, an African-American Republican, he spoke at the Republican convention in praise of Donald Trump, right? This is the guy. He came out yesterday and read this out. And what people are wanting to know is what was presented to the grand jury. Because generally speaking, when prosecutors bring things to a grand jury, the grand jury says, okay, you got it. I mean, what's the old saying, a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich? We just don't know. What we do know is that Kenneth Walker III, her boyfriend, had a concealed carry permit, was a licensed gun owner. We've got right-wing, the Small Penis Gun Club has invaded Louisville now with right-wing guys with their giant phony or artificial penises, their AR-15s slung over their shoulders, marching around. Supposedly to defend the rights of people who are legal carriers of weapons. He was her boyfriend. But this is just there's something wrong here. There's something deeply wrong here, and it may be that the Attorney General is right. That by the current law, those cops did nothing wrong. Outside of the guy who stood out in the parking lot just shooting randomly into the building. Not randomly, but shooting into the building. Which would tell us, by the way, that this law that has been tweaked and fine-tuned and carefully massaged over, 400 years in the United States, these laws that have been used to perpetuate racism and slavery and the oppression of, an underclass principally made up of people of color, but also in many states made up of poor white people. That these laws that basically give the police this quasi-authoritarian power are doing just what they're intended to do, and therefore, obviously getting justice for Breonna Taylor would be a good thing. But that said, the I don't want to say larger issue because I don't want to minimize her death in any way at all. But, clearly we've got a problem with the way that our laws are written in the United States, the ways that our laws are applied, the way that our laws are enforced, and the people that we hire to enforce those laws. The cop who stood out in the parking lot and shot into the apartment from the parking lot through the window, that guy had been fired from another police department in Kentucky, and the guy who fired him, the police chief who fired him, or the officer doing the evaluation, said he should never work in policing. And yet here he is. So we've got cops moving from... This argues for, at the very least, nationwide licensing of police officers the way that we have nationwide licensing of physicians. Both of them have the ability to kill you. Nationwide licensing of nurses. Both of them have the ability to kill you. And therefore, you license them. You regulate them. You make sure that they're not doing that. Over 2,500 people now have been exonerated of serious crimes in the United States after being falsely convicted. This is over the last 30 years. There's a new study that just came out in the National Registry of Exonerations. They found that 72% of the exoneration cases where people were found to be not guilty when the evidence was reevaluated, 72% of these cases involved misconduct by police. In other words, setting people up. 72 friggin' percent of them. And that's, if you look at what happened with the Breonna Taylor case, that was certainly the direction they were moving.